Welcome to the sixth video in this series. And this video, we're going to be making water and sand work together in our little sandbox simulation. If you're new to the series, make sure to check out the other videos on my channel, and I'll see you in there. All right, so let's create a C# script. Let's call it automata rule. And in this automata rule, we're going to turn it into a scriptable object. And we'll also need to create asset menu. File name is going to have, it's going to be called by default an automata rule. All right, a new automata rule. So a new automata rule, and the asset menu, or the menu name is going to be Voxels and automata rule. All right. Now, this scriptable object is going to store a list of int3s for each of the possible positions that our voxel can move to if that position next to us happens to be air. So let's for this we're going to say using unity.mathematics, and then in here we're going to say a public int3 array, and we're going to call this move directions. Yeah, we'll just call it move directions for now. And that's basically all we need to do. Now, go into Unity. Let's rename this to a scriptable objects, and we're going to create another one in Voxels automata rule. All right, and let's call this the sand automata rule. So move directions. For sand, we can move one down, one left and down, this is one right and down, one left and down, and then remove that, and one forward and down, and one back and down. And that's it. So these are the possibilities that we can move through, and the order we put them in is also going to be very important, because the first one we'll test is, can we move down? And if we can, then we will do that. Actually, I just realized these are going to be selected by randomly. So actually delete the first one, since if we need to move down, we must do that first and then skip all these possibilities. Otherwise, we're going to have sand moving jittery across the screen as it's moving down. We want sand to fall straight down, and then once it hits something, then spread out. So we're going to change this to public int3, and we're going to say stack directions. Now our stack directions, we're going to say it's a stack of directions that we need to go in order. So do in order, and let's just call this directions and spread directions. All right, let's go into Unity, and we might have to update this. Yep, we do. So the first thing is directions. The first one we can do is just -1, right? We can fall down. And the other one is -1 to the right, -1 to the left, -1 forward, and -1 back. All right, let's do this now. In our voxel automata, we're going to take in a reference, serialized field, private automata rule, a reference to our rule, so our rule. And we'll change this later, but for now we're just going to do one automata rule for sand, and later we'll make it so we can have one for each voxel type. All right, so all this can be deleted, and in here we'll say if we are sand, then what we're going to do is we are going to say we can get rid of is adjacent air, and we can get rid of all the code in here and all the code in here. So we're going to say move direction, apply directions, apply spread directions. All right. And these are exactly the same. They both take in a reference to the byte array as well as the byte to replace it with and the x and y and z position of the current voxel. So apply directions. We're going to say it's going to return a bool. And apply spread directions is also going to return a bool. So first, say if apply directions. So if we apply directions, if we say move down one, then we don't really need to do anything. Actually, what we can do is, if we did not apply the directions, then we can apply a spread direction. All right, so if we did not move down, we can't move down anymore, then we're going to spread. And this is basically the first direction, and then if stuck directions, and let's just call it that. Yeah. And since I renamed it, let's just go into here, and we're going to have to update this. Oh, or not. Cool. I think it's because of these rules. So just going to return true and for these functions. So return true. Yeah, and then we got to pass in x, y, z, reference to our voxels, and the voxel to replace it with is sand. So just 1. This is hard coded right now. We're going to change that later. All right. Now we can go ahead and update our sand automata rule. In the inspector, yeah, if stuck. I really want to call this something better. So if directions fails, then secondary directions. And I think we could just call it secondary. So secondary directions. So if this fails, we'll go to those. All right. You know what it does? We can rename it later. So we're going to need 1. All of these are negative down, 1 to the right, 1 to the left, and 1 forward, and 1 back. All right. So now, if we did not apply the directions, so apply first directions, and just apply directions and apply secondary directions. All right. So let's do this. One other thing we need to do is a boolean here, a public bool to say random directions, and we're going to set this equal to false by default. And this bool is going to say whether we should use a random, select randomly, or in order. Apply randomly or in order. And we're going to also say random secondary direction. All right, cool. So apply directions. If automata rule rule dot random direction. We'll just do this. Otherwise, return false. What we're gonna do is our rule dot random directions. I want to index the directions. If rule dot random direction and if rule dot directions dot length is greater than 0, then we're going to say rule dot directions, and we're going to say random dot range. And since we're using mathematics, we have to say unity engine dot random dot range, and we'll say 0 to rule.directions dot length. So select one of the directions randomly. Now we can say this in 3 direction. All right. So if we tell the voxel to move in one of these directions, then return true because we did apply a direction, and to apply it, we're just going to say set voxel, set the current voxel x, y, z, ref voxels to air. So set the current voxel to air, set the current voxel to air, and then the direction that we need to move in, we'll set that one to sand. So it'll look like sand moves because we'll get rid of the sand block that's where we currently are, and then we'll place another block in the direction that we were supposed to move so it looks like we moved. All right, so for that we're going to say set sand, and we're going to say set voxel x plus direction dot x, y plus direction dot y, and z plus direction dot z. So we'll just change this to y and z, and reference to our voxels, and we'll set that to sand. Set air, set sand. All right. And you know what? I'm just going to rename all this to move. There we go. All right. So that should work for our directions. Before we apply secondary directions, let's just test if this works. So let's go into our automata, and let's drag in our sand automata rule. And if we click play now, hopefully, when I click space, the sand should be falling, and it's not. All right, so I figured out the problem. Random direction is set to false by default. I'm just gonna get rid of this, and we're just gonna say we're always gonna apply these randomly, just for now, since I don't see a need for applying them not randomly, and that'll simplify our code. All right, so if we click play in Unity now, it should work. So click play and spacebar, and there you go. We see sand falling, and it falls through the ground. And the reason that's happening is because if we see a sand voxel, we move it. Well, when we say set voxel, if we are outside the limits of the array, we don't actually set the voxel, because obviously we'd get an error saying out of bounds of the array. So we just return here. So nothing happens, the sand just disappears. So to solve that, I am going to create another voxel type in our voxel palette. It's not going to have an automata rule yet, and I'm just going to call this rock. But we're going to set the ground floor to rock, and it's going to be like a kind of gray. All right. So let's go into our assets, and under voxel store, in start, so private void start, we're going to say for each voxel at x and z, not y, because we're just setting the ground floor, so we only need to go in the x and z. We're going to say voxels, and we're going to say utils, voxel utils dot index3d x 0 for y and z, and we're going to set that all to 2, which is our rock voxel type. Now you might think for a second that rock, because if you're trying to be smart, arrays index by 0 and 1, but if you remember, in the voxel palette, we subtract 1 from the ID so that we never have a voxel type for error. We don't have to have a voxel type for error. So it is indeed 2, so rock. All right, so if you click play now, because we implemented voxel types in the last lecture, or the last video, the ground should now be gray colored. Yep, and it is. So now if I click spacebar, for some reason the sand continues to fall, and I think that's because in our automata rules, we don't take into account whether the voxel below us is air or not. So in our apply directions, we need to say if the voxel below us is not air, then don't do anything. So let's say if we can actually remove this. Oh, no, wait, we can't. Okay, so if the voxel, so we're going to say get voxel at x, our current voxel plus the voxel below us, or whatever the rule is applying, get voxel voxels. And yeah, if the current voxel is not equal to, is equal to air, if the voxel below us is equal to air, or the voxel we're trying to move in, so this direction, if the direction, so say we're trying to move down, if the voxel below us is equal to air, then move. And this direction can be anything. It doesn't have to be down. It could be up, it could be to the left, it could be to the right. But this should prevent us from not moving anywhere that's not air. So if we click play now, what we should see is the sand stops. All right. Now, to apply secondary directions, if we fail to go downwards, then the secondary directions, we can copy this, paste it in here. And actually, this true right here needs to go inside of that. So if we did move down, turn true. If we did successfully move. All right. Let's see. So apply secondary directions. We're just going to say secondary directions dot length, and we'll say rule dot secondary directions, and that should be all. And then also voxel, the voxel to move. So voxel to move is going to be sand. And honestly, I don't see why we need that right now, since we're hard coding sand right now. So just 1, and we're not using it. So there we go. Yeah, we'll fix that later in a second. All right, so secondary directions, and hopefully just with that, without having to do anything, and we've already applied the rules here for secondary directions. So if we just click play, we should hopefully see the sand spread. And we do, although not how we wanted. So what's going on here? It's only spreading to the left, which if we look at our sand automata rules, it's, sorry, not left, it's spreading to the right. Yeah, this is the right. Okay, because Z is forward. So it is spreading only to the first rule, which it's not supposed to do that. And the reason is we forgot to put in here secondary directions not length. So our primary directions only has 1, so we were only getting the first of our secondary directions. All right, so let's click play now, and we should see now sand falling. There you go. All right, now it's time to make it so that we can have more than just one automata rule. To do that, let's go ahead and open up our voxel palette. Now, our voxel type currently just stores a color and a name for us to see in the inspector. Well, now we're also going to store a automata rule. We're going to call this a rule. So now every voxel type, or every voxel in our voxel palette, can have an automata rule. So with this very simple change, we can go to Voxel Automata and change this from Automata rule to our Voxel palette. And we'll call this our palette. All right. Now let's open up the inspector and let's just set that reference really quick. We can go to Automata and so it didn't update because we're getting errors. So Unity's not going to apply this change until we resolve the errors. So for now, let's just comment all this out and then we'll take care of that in a second. All right, let's go to Automata in the inspector and let's pass in our palette, Voxel palette. All right, now open up the Voxel palette and you'll see the sand voxel type needs an automata rule. So we're going to pass in the sand automata rule. Rock, we're not going to give it any automata rules. It's just going to be solid. So we'll leave that as it is. And now we can go ahead and open up our automata, Voxel automata script. All right, let's go about applying this. So first thing, in our automata function, or our method, we're going through every single voxel and applying directions. Now, what we need to do is we need to get the current voxel, which we are doing right here. And when we apply our automata rule, we need to pass in the voxel. So voxel, pass in our voxel, and do the same here. Okay, so now that we passed in the voxel, we can tell what voxel we are dealing with, and we can figure out which automata rule to apply. So, apply direction to this automata, to this voxel, using its rules. So, all we have to do is say palette, and here we can do is palette, and we can index it with our voxel, and we can say dot rule. And then in here, since not all voxel types are going to have a rule, we can say if rule is not equal to null. So if we have set an automata rule for this voxel, then we're going to do the following. All right, we're going to work on secondary directions next, but for now, we're just going to do this. So palette.rule, and really, I think all we have to do is just replace palette.rule, and palette.rule. Yeah. Now, one last thing, instead of only applying automata to sand, what we're going to say if it's not equal to air. So not air. And that's all. Yep, that is it for our apply directions. All right, so now if we click play again, hopefully we should see nothing change. It should still do the same thing it's been doing before. All right, now we just need to do the same thing for our apply secondary directions. All right, yeah, it should work fully now, so let's just check this. Let's see. Yep, so sand is working again. All right, now it's time for some fun. Now that we have our sand, and now that we can create as many automata rules as we want, let's add water. So water, we're going to color blue, a deep blue. That's the color I'm picking. You're welcome to pick any color you want. And then in our objects, let's create a new automata rule. We're going to call it our water automata rule. All right. So for our directions, the first direction we're going to add is -1. So if -1 is available, we will move down. And then for our secondary directions, it's going to be very similar to sand. So -1 for all of these, and and actually, nope, we don't need these. My bad. Okay, so we're not going to move down. We're going to move sideways. So 1, -1, and 1, -1. And yeah, so basically water can move down, and if it can't move down, then it'll move to the side. Instead of at an angle, sand moves at an angle. Sand can only move at an angle, right? It can only flow if it can move down as well. Whereas water can just move to the side forever, right? It'll flow and then it'll just keep flowing off. All right. So now that we got that figured out, we just need to have a way of adding water and sand to our scene, depending on a different click of a button. So let's go into our voxel renderer? No, our voxel automata. All right, so in the voxel automata script, we are currently saying if you hold space, add sand. Let's change this to hold S key for sand. So S key, hold on, S, yeah, that's it, okay. And then else if you are holding the W key for water, then we'll add water. And instead of adding it in the same exact position, we're going to add it just slightly more to the, let's see, -3. So we're just adding in a different spot as the sand. And actually, I take it back. Let's add it in the exact same spot as the sand. And replace 1 with 2, which is rock. No, so 3. Sand, and water. Yeah, so everything should be working. Oh, I forgot one thing. In our apply directions, we are replacing water. If the direction we're trying to move in is, sorry, not replacing water. If the direction we're trying to move in is air, so if it's 0, then we'll move it. But when we remove the voxel here and add it again here, we need to make sure to add the same type. So put that in there, and the same for here. All right, set voxel and set voxel. All right, now let's click play, and we have our water automata rule, and we need to just add it to our palette. So go into the voxel palette, scroll down to water, and let's add the automata rule. All right. Cross your fingers. Let's click play and see what happens. If I hold space, nothing happens because we took it away. S for sand. You can see sand is falling. And now W for water. And there you have it, folks. Water and sand. Let's do sand again just to see what happens. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. Sand is falling, sand is falling, sand is falling, sand is falling. All right, I want to know if water can overtake sand. So W, water's falling, yes. All right, S again. See, water continuously moves. It flows around. And sand kind of stays in the same spot. Look at that. Would you look at that? Isn't that awesome? All right, so that is all for this video. We've got an unlimited capability to add many different voxel types. You could add lava, you could add water and sand, but currently the only rules we have are move rules. So say you have water and lava and they touch. Well, in Minecraft, I believe that creates another block. I forgot what it's called, but when you combine water and lava, you get a different type of voxel. So we don't have rules for that, but you could easily just add another property into our automata rules here and go ahead and apply it in here. For now, this is all that I'm going to do, is just flowing water and sand. And in the next video, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup, and then we're going to make it so that we can add voxels anywhere in the scene that we want to. So that we can place, like with a mouse cursor, like almost like Minecraft, place blocks and we'll be able to make a water canal, and then we'll put water into it and watch it flow. So I hope to see you there, and thanks for watching.